Thank you very much, everyone, for joining today on behalf of the Civil Society Coordinating Group for the GFF, but also its working groups, the Global Youth Platform for the GFF, and our constituency Civil Society and Youth IG representative. I welcome you all in this meeting today that will take us for 90 minutes through three important agenda item for the CSCG and for the GFF stakeholders. We will review our 2023 annual workshop outcome document, and we will also provide you all with an overview of the recent GFF IG17 meeting decisions, specifically outcome, takeaways, and the contribution from our constituency at this meeting. Following, we will hear from the GFF Secretariat on its latest updates relative to the implementation of the Civil Society and Youth Engagement Framework, as well as on the Deliver the Future resource mobilization campaign. And so I would like to thank very much Stephanie and Matti, who are joining us today on behalf of the GFF Secretariat. Thank you so much for your time. And finally, we hope that we will have some time for a discussion that will be moderated by our IG reps, also around the Post-IG17 and our 2024 action agenda. So thank you very much for coming today. I hope that it will be an engaging and an informative webinar. And with that, I would like to give the floor to our dear Jackie Katana, who is the founder and the executive director of 3FHI in Uganda, but also acts currently as a principal representative for civil society in the GFF Investors Group. So Jackie, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Vincent. And once again, to add on Vincent's voice, we welcome everyone to this meeting, and we look forward to a very vibrant discussion to our constituency. My names are already mentioned, and we would like to say we have good representation with the Civil Society Global Working Group hosted by PI, and we'll be able to get more details on the role and what we've been able to do, what transpired in the IG17 meeting. But before that, I will quickly run through the GFF governance, anchoring the role of CSOs, but also where does the Civil Society Global Working Group come from. The details of this governance structure, we have Matti, once again, Matti and Stephanie, you're welcome, who are from the GFF Secretariat, and they'll be able to add a voice should any one of us require more details. But in short, this is how the GFF governance structure works. We have the country platforms, and that's where actually most of us as civil society fall when it gets to country engagements. And in most of these countries, we have what we call, some of them call them the RAMNAC platforms or the CSO coalitions as part of the stakeholder platforms that support, monitor, and ensure that the RAMNAC sharpened plans are delivered. That's at there are other platforms. We have the FBO in some countries, and also we have the private sector. But this is again anchored on the global platforms or the global governance structures, including the trust fund. Matti and Stefan can throw more light, which is the overall, and then the GFF Investors Group, where again, the civil society have representation. And that's where we come from today to share with you what transpired in the latest, that is the IG17, which took place in Nairobi in November last year. Next slide. So this is the GFF Investors Group. In summary, the roles and responsibilities. We have the alignment looking at how different stakeholders collaborate at different levels, prioritizing national health plans and the investment cases in terms of resources, in terms of planning, in terms of implementation of the sharpened plan. Then we have the financing. That's why you see when it gets to civil society, one of our pillars is as financing. So it's again anchored on the bigger pillar that run through the governance and the management of GFF. This is both domestic financing to sustain the response or to sustain the reproductive health ROMNAC activities. We have the private sector and also other external financing. Then we have the monitoring, again, which is a very big role of CSOs to ensure that we monitor how the sharpened plan is implemented to deliver the results as a way of improving women, children, and adolescent health. We have the strategic advice, and this is again to the trust fund, but also to the GFF Secretariat. And then we have learning, which is foster innovation and learning from country experiences. Next slide. This is how the membership or the composition of the investors group is. And this is the list of the participants of November IG17. We had representation from different governments. Governments have representation. We have Ethiopia, which is a co-chair right now, Burkina Faso, Central Africa Republic, Democratic Republic of Congo, Ghana, Kenya, Liberia, Malawi, Mali, and Sierra Leone. So those are the representatives for the 2 years. We again explain, or Matthew and Stefan will add how the IG is organized. Then we have the donors. The co-chair is Netherlands. We have Canada, German, JICA, Norway, the United Kingdom, and the United States. These are some of the main donors that put in resources or pull resources to the GFF. Then we have multilateral financing, that is Gavi, Global Fund, and World Bank, who are also members. We have the private sector, represented Baptist Associates, Lavender, and then basically for mothers. Then we have the private foundations. These include the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, SIF, Children Investment Fund Foundation, Susan T. Buffett Foundation, and then we have civil society, which is actually where now again we are anchored. We have ASAPSU, we have Faith for Family Health Initiative, Game Hub Initiative, GFF Hub Coalition, Health and Rights Education Program, and then WEMOS. So the four, two CSOs, alternate and principal, and then youth, the alternate and principal are representatives from this CSO representation at the investors group. And we'll be hearing more about each of these. Then we have UN agencies. We have representatives from UNFPA, UNICEF, and WHO. And then we have a global platform for reproductive health that represents that level, that is the PMNSH. Next. So these are the IG representatives that I mentioned who represent the different organizations that are representing the IG at the global level. So we have Maziko is going to be introducing himself, outgoing principal, Miria, outgoing principal. Then we have alternate, incoming principal, that is Oyemi Pitani, then myself, incoming principal. Then for the youth representatives, we have Mariama Abudu Gado, and then who is outgoing principal, and incoming principal is Kenneth Prudencio. So in summary, this was to just walk you through the GFF governance structure and anchor the representation of where the CSOs is coming from. And the next, we are going to be looking at the Civil Society Global Working Group, which is hosted by PAI to give us more insights of how that operates. Next, I'll hand over to Christina Weggs to give us more insights about the working group. And once again, we welcome everyone. If we have any comments regarding the structure I've talked about, Marty and Stephanie are here with us. Thank you so much. Over to you, Christina.
Thank you so much. Vincent, could you progress the slides, please? So I apologize, I'm having a little bit of technical difficulty, so I'm presenting from my phone and using my computer, but I hope you can see me and hear me. Are you able to hear me okay?
Perfect.
Great, thank you, super. So my name's Christina Weggs. I am Vice President here at PAI. We have the great privilege of being the NGO host. That means that we are providing a platform for something called the Civil Society Coordinating Group. That is a group, if you would move to the next slide, that's a group of over 500 civil society groups sitting all over the world who are working at the subnational, national, regional, and global level to shape the outcomes and drive the accountability for the global financing facility. And our job as NGO host is to act as coordinator and organizer for the group of experts. And we have a steering committee that meets every 2 weeks to sort of progress the group. Could you go to the next slide? I'm sorry. We have, you'll see here, we have a wide membership from countries around the world. And one of the key ways that we work, which you'll hear more about in this webinar, is we have working groups. Those working groups have open participation. Any of you can join. And they come together each year and develop action plans on how we're going to drive accountability, how we're going to mobilize sustainable health financing, how we're going to strengthen country-level capacity building and meaningful engagement of CSOs, and also ensure that youth have leadership roles in driving progress. Each one of those working groups are open to any of you to join. Throughout the session, you'll be hearing about how those working groups pulled together a great workshop that we had in November, which we'll share out about. And then at the end of this workshop, of course, we will make sure that we share information so you can join any of the working groups you're interested in. I know that we're running a little bit over time, so I'm going to move straight over to handing the mic over to my colleague, Howard Akimala, who is a member of the Civil Society Coordinating Group. He works with Henet in Kenya and was one of our hosts for this CSCG Annual Workshop that we had in Nairobi in November. I'll hand it over to Howard.
Thank you very much, Christina, and I'm greatly honored for this opportunity. So as you heard, my name is Howard Akimala. I work for Living Goods based in Nairobi, but I'm also the Vice Chair of the Health NGO Networks. And indeed, we were quite happy to host the meeting in November. I'll go ahead and share a few things about the workshop. So we had 3 objectives for the annual workshop that took place in Nairobi in November. The first one being to showcase what has worked and what are the successes to date. Secondly, we also discussed what still needs work, 5 priorities for the CSCG moving forward. Because I think it's always important to discuss where we've come from, what is currently working, so that we can define how to move into the future. And then the third objective was to make an investment case to GFF donors for building of a stronger CSO and YLO constituency. I think you all appreciate then that it only makes sense that if you have a strong constituency, otherwise you will not be able to articulate things well. Therefore, these 3 formed the key objectives for the workshop that we had in Nairobi in November. Then moving on to the participants, in November, we had up to 40 in-person participants attending the meeting. At least 80 virtual attendees who took part via Zoom. So, of course, it was good to have a hybrid kind of participation to allow for more people to take part, because it was not possible to have everybody coming to Nairobi for the meeting. So we had representation from 25 GFF partner countries, 3 eligible countries, and 4 GFF donor countries that were represented. So again, as you can see here, and I think as you saw on the map that Christina shared, there was a varied representation across the different fields. So for this particular meeting, we had up to 149 expressions of interest, people who were keen to attend. And of course, it was not possible to have everybody attend. So we formed a selection committee, which worked very closely with PAI as the host NGO to try and sift through and ensure that we were able to have key, let me call them key constituencies that were represented. So including ensuring things like gender, geographical representation, balance between YLOs and CSOs, just basically ensuring each constituency at least was ably represented, also including the element of both Francophone and Anglophone countries, because a number of times, if you're not careful in doing this one, you end up having it a bit skewed on one side. And here I would really wish to commend the host NGO, that's PAI, because they did let us run with this particular process. So I would say actually it was CSCG led in terms of choosing the participants, and were the ones who eventually made the call on which people were able to come. So again here, I wish to say that apologies to the ones who couldn't make it, because we couldn't have everybody coming on board. It was a difficult task, but then we had to try and sift through on who would come and who maybe joined virtually. And then also, again, during the course of the workshop, we also had a planning committee for how the program was run. Again, primarily led by the CSCG representatives, with the PAI providing very good support in the background. So then to speak a bit into the thematic discussions that we had a number of these ones. The first one being the CSCG goals, evolution, and progress to date. Typically, as always, it's good to look back where we've come from, how far we have reached to date. Secondly, it was around ensuring meaningful CSO and YLO leadership, progress, gaps, barriers, and opportunities so far. Then third, driving accountability at country and regional levels. Of course, just checking that in country, do we know who the people are? And then how do we drive accountability both at national level and also regional, just to ensure then that we are keeping within the mandate. Then fourth, around achieving sustainable financing and or mobilizing domestic resources. So of course, it's a mix of both, because without financing, then it's difficult to achieve our objectives. Fifth, around advancing gender equity and social inclusion, ensuring all the various groups are represented. Sixth, setting priorities for people. Again, very consultative, very open to members to contribute towards priorities. Then seventh, we had validating and endorsing the CSCG messages and asks at IG7. Typically, of course, these asks come from down here before they go up to the IG level. So it's always very key to ensure that the asks actually coming from bottom, coming up. And then finally, dialogue with the GFF Secretariat and a shared action. So those were the key thematic discussions we had during our meeting. So here now, next we're looking at a picture showing the different participants during the meeting. So as you can see, we had some who were there in person and others who joined virtually. It was a very rich discussion, of course, having different sessions, including a panel, as you can see there on the right, group work, as you can see on the top left. And then, of course, at the bottom there, you can see the screen showcasing the virtual participants. Allow me to hand over back to Christina for the next session before I come up and wrap up what the workshop evaluation said. Christina?
Great, wonderful. Thank you so much, Howard. And as you can see, we had an incredible group of folks in the room and virtually. A huge shout out, and I think Mary said this in the comments. We really appreciated the amazing participation of our colleagues who joined online, which we know is always challenging. And thanks to our colleague Vincent who facilitated that. building on the agenda that Howard prepared, I wanted to share some of the outcomes and recommendations from the workshop. We're going to be sharing a lot with you today, and we want to let you know that right after this workshop, we will send you a link to the complete document where you can read about each session, each presenter, and also our action items. What we did, as Howard discussed, is we went through all of those priorities for the year and not just shared lessons learned, breakthroughs, challenges, but we really wanted to develop a very clear vision and also very concrete action items that we could move forward as the CSCG in 2024, but also, as Howard mentioned, we had a really wonderful dialogue with the GFF at the end of this workshop. So we sat with them and went through each one of these action items and talked about what they might lead, what CSCG might lead. And there were also some specific action items for us as the NGO host to provide good materials coordination and support. First, we had a really great discussion about barriers, breakthroughs, and opportunities for ensuring meaningful leadership of civil society and youth-led organizations. During that session, we heard some great research from our colleagues at WAVEMUS, from our colleagues at Waukee Health, and also a CSO landscaping that the NGO host led. We also heard from our colleagues from the Global Youth Platform about some of the extraordinary work they've done as youth, but also some of the persistent barriers they're facing to meaningful participation and leadership. Coming out of all of this, we landed on something that we wanted to move forward by the next year. Our vision is that we want to make sure that the GFF multi-stakeholder platforms that are at the country level, if you remember, Jackie went through this before, have more meaningful and consistent CSO engagement. And there were some key actions that we put in place. One, calling on the GFF to put in place standards accountabilities for GFF liaisons, who are the connective tissue between civil society and the GFF processes in country. Also having the CSCG map out what countries were not meaningfully engaged, and also make sure that we're providing up-to-date tools to help CSOs navigate this process in 2024, including an updated guide to the CSO guide to the GFF, which we'll be releasing soon. Can you go to the next slide, please? We had another really powerful discussion about gender equality and social accountability. This was really a priority for the civil society coordinating group. And this cuts across all of the different action areas. We had some great reflections on how well we are and how well the GFF is doing in living into the commitments we've made through the GFF Gender Roadmap. One of the things that was very powerful about this session, and you'll read more about this in the notes, is we had a great presentation from our colleagues from CSCG in Indonesia, giving a very concrete case study on how they were tackling some gender barriers. For example, there was a new health bill in Indonesia, which did not include and actually excluded people with disabilities, indigenous people, people living with HIV, and the LGBT community. The group CSCG did some analysis, including speaking to people from these affected groups, from these vulnerable groups, to talk about how their exclusion from the health bill would adversely affect them. And they were actually able to improve the bill to include a broader and more inclusive list of who would be reached by this bill. One thing that was interesting is this group wanted to focus on ensuring that all new investment cases and investment cases under revision would mainstream gender equity. And they wanted to focus on actions we can take ourselves, including challenging ourselves to include gender equity in our own engagement frameworks, using the gender roadmap for advocacy, using data to analyze the existing investment cases to see where there are gaps, and then also proactively inviting gender experts into those spaces. One of the challenges for the goals for the CSCG in the coming year is to provide and broker tools and guidance to make this happen, but also calling on the GFF to proactively ensure that all investment cases mainstream gender equity and gender, according to the GFF Gender Roadmap. Could you go to the next slide, please? This is just another snapshot of the very active participation we had. All of the action items that I'm sharing now were developed through a series of discussions led by the CSCG, where we started big and talked about all the range of things, all the problems that we might solve in the year, and really narrowing down to these very concrete action items. Could you go to the next slide, please? Hold on a second, let me catch up with you. There we go. As Howard mentioned, a big priority of the CSCG is to make sure that civil society has the resources, tools, and is positioned to meaningfully shape health financing, including unlocking additional investments through domestic resource mobilization. We had a great panel that was co-facilitated by the GEM Hub and Health Rights and Education Program in Malawi. It included case studies from Madagascar, Malawi, Nigeria, and Senegal. There was a great example from Madagascar where a new coalition was formed that included the Malagasy Coalition for Strengthening Health Systems, the NGO Citizens Collective for Budget Monitoring, and collectively over time, they coordinated engagement with the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Finance, members of Parliament, senators, journalists, as well as the GFF liaison. And they were able to successfully advocate for the reintegration of reproductive health, family planning, and nutrition into the national budget. And they were able to increase the budget allocation from $0 to $600,000 in 2023. So really, really great findings. What the group recommended was to sustain the momentum. The group really found learning and training that they'd done through something called the Joint Learning Agenda, which was a health financing training initiative, to be very, very strong, very helpful. And they called on the GFF to build and expand that moving forward. Also, our CSCG Health Financing Group was charged for developing and adapting tools to make sure that these best practices are shared more widely with the CSCG membership. In this group and in all the groups, one thing that came across really clearly was that for civil society to really drive progress in shaping health financing commitments, but also really tracking financing flows and driving accountability, one-year funding is not enough. And there was a consistent call, which we discussed with the GFF, to move towards multi-year funding, which is needed to see these kind of ambitious outcomes. And the final slide is about talking about accountability. Again, we had another great panel to talk about some of the practical experiences and tools advancing meaningful accountability. That means both accountability for rights, access, equity at the front lines of service delivery, but also accountability for all partners delivering on their commitments, including government and donors and others delivering on their financing commitments. We heard from Nigeria, we heard from Uganda, we heard from Bangladesh, really great case studies. One example is the Nagura Youth Health Network, presented on some work that they did across 10 districts and 13 health facilities, where they used a community monitoring tool. And what they were able to do was engage with community structures and strategies and hold 60 meetings with district and other subnational decision makers. Based on the great tools that are coming out of this and other processes, there was a call for the CSCG financing and accountability working groups to both kind of map out accountability capacity and also share some proven tools and approaches for social accountability with the constituency in 2024. And again, a key recommendation of this group was the importance of multi-year funding, which was needed to equip and position civil society and youth organizations to monitor and drive accountability over time. So that's a lot to throw at you, just a highlight of some of the key and insightful recommendations that came from the Civil Society Coordinating Group for the year. And as Howard mentioned, and you can see in these photos here, one thing that was very exciting about this workshop is the GFF Secretariat joined us at the end of the workshop for almost an hour and a half, where we discussed each one of the recommendations from the CSCG and talked about what was possible in the next year and roles that both the GFF Secretariat as well as the CSCG might move forward on this. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Howard And later we're going to be hearing from Miria about how our investors group representatives took the action items from the workshop, took our dialogue from the GFF Secretariat, and actually brought it to the investors group meeting. But first I'll hand it over to Howard to share some feedback we got on the workshop itself. Back to you, Howard.
Thank you very much, Christina. I think you are extremely articulate. As always, a difficult act to follow. So after the workshop, we had a post-completion survey just to try and check what was the levels of satisfaction by the participants of the workshop that we had. 91% of respondents were satisfied or extremely satisfied with how the workshop went. So I think that's a big thumbs up for the organizers and the host NGO. Secondly, there was large support for adding a third day of the workshop activity. It was a fairly intense 2 days, trying to pack in quite a lot of stuff. And of course, again, bearing in mind our colleagues from across different time zones who joined in virtually. But there was clear recommendation that good add a third day for the workshop activities. Then we had a recommendation to increase in-person attendance and to strengthen virtual engagement. I think, of course, we do understand following a meeting virtually over a course of 2 days or 3 days is not easy. So we understand where this recommendation is coming from. We also try and look in the future for increase in-person attendance. And then finally, there was a recommendation to ensure greater inclusivity, including people with disabilities. So yes, as a selection committee, we really tried our best to ensure good representation, but as always, there's always room for it. And we take this kind of feedback very positively and look forward to implementing some of these recommendations in the future. Then after the workshop, we had a field visit that was organized by some of our partners in country. We had the Health NGOs Network, HENET, as one of the organizers, Scaling Up Nutrition for the SUN Movement, OAY, Organization of African Youth, and Y Plus Kenya, who supported in the visit to an area of Nairobi called the Dagoretti South Empowerment Center, just to try and get a feel of how are we implementing these interventions by the grantees in country. So we had a very good visit to that area, and I'm not sure, Christina, if we do still have time to allow maybe 1 or 2 just to voice over what they saw, or is our time?
Yes, please.
Oh yes, yeah. So maybe just have maybe 1 or 2 people who took part, just speaking to this, just to give a bit of a flavor about what happened in the field. I cannot see the attendance of the meeting. So can you see?
Yes, absolutely. Howard, I believe that Oyeyemi, Miria,
Yes,
and Sheila
I'm here.
were together during the visit.
Please go ahead.
I'll just share a few things, and then Oyeyemi can also share. So I think for many people from the investor group as well, that was a highlight, the visit to this center, because they really saw what civil society can do with also very little resources and the impact that we can have. So basically, this is a center where the youth can go and find a safe space, and the center also provides some skills building activities for teenager mothers, like making soap or making yogurt. And we met some of them that have established their own businesses, and they can support their families. We also saw some of the theater skits that they are doing to raise awareness of the community about, in this case, gender-based violence and domestic gender-based violence. And we did that, we attended that also with the community attending. And then we also had some small discussion circles with community members and the help of the Center for Translation, of course, where we met people and discussed. It was like in my circle, it was mainly issues about gender equity. So yes, I think a lot of IG members were very impressed by it, and that increased the commitment to support civil society. So I'll stop here. Yemi, I don't know if you have anything to add.
You actually said it all. It was a very hands-on process because, of course, the IG members saw it themselves. They saw the resilience in the people in their adolescents. We saw firsthand adolescents carrying babies, pregnant adolescents. So it wasn't a third-person kind of report. They saw it by themselves. And like Miria said, it actually made our work very easy. We didn't have to say so much to convince them that there's need to put in more investment in the health of children and adolescents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jackie, anything to add?
Not now. I think the rest can be part of the takeaways. Thank you, Howard.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So allow me to hand over to the next section. I believe Miria will lead us to the next section. Thank you.
The next session, as already introduced, is
Yes.
Miria coming on and will be supported by Stephanie, who is the partnership specialist and governance lead at GFF Secretariat. You're welcome, Miria.
Thank you, Jackie. Hi, everyone. This is Miria Kutsumpa from VEMOS, from the Netherlands. And I'm one of the civil society representatives outgoing after a couple of years there. Just to say before I start that I'm really happy with the attendance that we have in today's webinar. And I think that shows that the engagement and the workshop and everything contributed to that. So nice to see like 73 participants today participating in this discussion. In the next slide, I'm not going to go over it. You saw our faces, you saw who we are. And just to make also the call now that Maziko and myself are the outgoing representatives. So please, anyone who has interest in engaging more, apply for the position of the new alternate in the elections of the Civil Society Coordinating Group. We'll mention that in the end of the webinar as well. So let's see what happened at the IG meeting this year in November. Here you will see the agenda. Don't get fixated in the small letters. It's just look at the items. Some of the items are the standing ones, like to approve the reports and everything. But some highlights I'm going to refer to afterwards. What was important in this meeting is that there were also some documents for endorsement. For example, you will see that in the stock taking. Thank you. You will see that in the stock taking of the GFF strategy. And in the next slide, you will see that on the SRHR in the GFF strategy. But I'll take it one by one and share with you some highlights. First of all, and before I get into the agenda, in this IG meeting, it was very important that we were allocated specific time to deliver a GFF statement, a civil society statement, which was prepared on the basis and on the content of the workshop that Christina and Howard presented just before. So we collected everything and we put it together into our opening remarks during the IG. So let's move on to the highlights, and then I'm happy to answer any more specific questions. So I collected per agenda item some important points and some decision points that I think everyone should know. So this is what I'm going to present now. But of course, you will see online in the GFF website also the announcement with the main outcomes of the IG and Trust Fund Committee meeting. So this is available. A key process that is happening at the moment at the GFF is the evaluation. You know from before the IG that we have representation there in the steering committee of the GFF evaluation. So that was part of the discussion as well. And we highlighted that it's important to evaluate both processes and added value and impact of the GFF. Of course, we will hear more of that as we move forward, but this is an ongoing process that is happening at the time, and it's going to be very important because it's going to also inform the next strategy of the GFF, so after 2025. A highlight that I think is worth mentioning here, you saw that there was an agenda item on Kenya, so we had some updates from the Kenya Ministry of Health. And what is important to note is that the new round of financing for Kenya was approved. So there was discussion on that at the Trust Fund Committee as well, but now it's officially approved. So on the rest of the agenda, one item was stock taking on the GFF strategy, where basically it's a discussion where you review and you reflect on results. And the decision that was made on this is to continue doing annual updates on key performance indicators of the GFF. That was suggested previously. Now that's, I mean, all the IG members agreed to that. What we heard is that the GFF fully embraces contribution over attributional results, which I find a very important way of thinking. And in the same discussion, we heard about workshops that the GFF is doing with liaison officers and country focal points for country platform functionality. And actually, that was a point that we heard a lot from the colleagues that participated at the civil society workshop, coming up again and again. So we see that, you know, the GFF Secretariat hears that and takes action to improve that. On the alignment agenda, a highlight for me was that the GFF endorsed the Lusaka agenda on alignment. Probably you have seen this coming in online in different networks. I think I shared it as well in our mailing list. But the Lusaka agenda is 5 strategic shifts that initiatives like the GFF can do to improve their alignment with country priorities. So the GFF is on board with that. And actually, there is a specific work plan for joint action together with Gavi, Global Fund, and other global health initiatives. So I found that a very positive development of this IG. Then you saw on the agenda that we discussed the GFF's SRHR approach. SRHR stands for Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights. So the approach was endorsed. Of course, there was a very rich discussion. It was not just a yes or no exercise. There was a very rich discussion that I took out 2 highlights that there's need to be more focus on conflict and fragile states when it comes to SRHR. And actually, there was a very rich discussion as well on the right to safe abortion, where member states share the experience with their respective political situation around this topic, which I found a very honest and great conversation to have at the IG level. Then a discussion, a decision point had to do with the private sector and innovation strategy of the GFF. So we had a background paper that shared some reflections on how the GFF involves the private sector in healthcare and how it involves private financing as well. So there was a discussion on that. What we highlighted many times, not just us, but many IG members, was that private sector involvement, of course, it's not optional. It's a reality in GFF countries, but key is to stick to equity and social protection when you involve private sector. So this is something that came out a lot during the discussion. A new working group is going to be set up to develop the specific GFF approach on that. And civil society and youth, we were invited to participate in this working group, which was very much appreciated. So you will be hearing more on that as we go. And then last but not least, a new, I think, item in the discussions of the investors group was climate and health. And of course, I mean, any global health initiative, I think, cannot not discuss climate and health. So that was recognized by IG members. And a quote that I heard was that every crisis is eventually a health crisis. So it's very relevant to the GFF, and it's also an opportunity for alignment. And actually, here I would like to share a very good point that Kenneth, our youth rep, made during the discussion, that this is also an opportunity from the GFF to learn from the civil society and youth, because there are CSOs and youth-led organizations that are already working on this intersection of climate and health. And I think that was very well noted. There is a working group now established for that. Again, civil society and youth got invited, and we are going to be sitting that to move forward this agenda. So that's for me. Next, you will see just a little quote from the statement that we did at the beginning, in the few minutes that we had in the beginning of the discussion that I mentioned before, that we should sustain the trust and the momentum that we already gained, and that the capacity of civil society organizations and youth-led organizations must be consistently and continuously built to reach the last mile. And that was very repeated many times during the IG. I'll stop here. Happy to receive any questions, and I think Stephanie will come in now.
Thank you, Miria. Allow me to, before we invite Stephanie to announce a few things, we are going to have general discussions at the end of the presentations, and that's why it's very important we save some time. With 76 participants, I can imagine the vibrancy of the discussion we are going to have. But particularly for the GFF Secretariat, that is Matti and Stephanie, immediately after their presentation, we are going to open it up for a question and answer, just in case they drop out of the call before we finish. Then all other presentations, including the CSCG workshop, what Miria has presented, and the rest of the presentations, we are going to have general discussions towards the end. So I invite Stephanie to add on this, and then you invite Matti, you continue with the GFF Secretariat presentation. Thank you. And if you can kindly introduce yourself again to save on time from my end. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jackie, and thanks, Miria, as well. You gave a really great overview. I'm Stephanie Salisbury. I'm a partnership specialist for the GFF Secretariat. Been working more specifically on civil society engagement along with Matti Dia for the last few years. And I'm from the Secretariat and World Bank side, the lead of the NGO host project with PAI. So thanks so much for having us join today. It's really great to come in and see how many folks join these meetings and the interest and the energy. So really honored to be here and happy to answer any questions you have. So I think I'm just going to elaborate a little bit on some of the investors group takeaways that Miria covered quite well. I really don't have that much to add, but just a few other key points that I wanted to raise. First of all, I think that it's the CSCG pre-IG workshop. The fact that it took place before the actual meeting was, I think it was a very palpable energy that came into the meeting from the civil society constituency. And I think it was really impactful, and all the other partners around the table could really see that. So I'm really appreciative that that was able to move forward, and all the folks were engaged and participated for those 2 days. I think it was a really robust and productive workshop. So just a few key sort of next steps or follow-ups from the investors group I wanted to flag in addition to what Miria raised. So on the specific agenda item on the global alignment agenda and the Lusaka agenda and Lusaka agreement. So I think Miria covered it well, but there was a bit of a discussion and then an agreement moving forward to actually make this a standing agenda item in investors group meetings moving forward, which I think is important and underlines sort of the importance of this agenda for all the partners sitting around the table. So I think that's something the Secretariat is taking on board. And as Miria mentioned, the Secretariat is also working with Global Fund and Gavi around this agenda. So I think you'll see more of that in future meetings. Additionally, on the SRHR piece, as Miria mentioned, that this was a really robust discussion and always generates a lot of interest. And there were actually a series of deep dive conversations leading up to the investors group meeting in November, and there will actually be one or two more before the next investors group meeting. So the civil society investors group representatives will join that those meetings and hopefully be able to report out to you. They haven't been scheduled yet, but keep an eye. And as a result of this, there's likely to be a standing SRHR agenda item in all investors group meetings, or at least annually moving forward as well. So then lastly, I think on the two working groups, just flagging again that the private sector and the climate and health working group are likely to kick off next week. And we do have representatives from civil society and youth joining, so we're really appreciative of that. And likely there will be a report out of sort of the first phase of those working groups at the next investors group meeting. So that will likely be, just for everyone's information, in June, and it will be hybrid. So the only other piece to note as well is that there was from the governance roadmap and structure perspective, there was a big push and ask from the investors group for the trust fund committee to sort of that group of donors to meet after the investors group, so the investors group partners can really feel like they're providing advice and guidance into some of those funding decisions. And so that will happen as well in June. The investors group will meet first to have these discussions, and that will feed into the donor meeting that will take place after. So I think from my side, I don't want to take up too much time, but I'm happy to answer any questions. And again, thank you so much for your engagement. Back to you, Jackie.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, Stephanie. If you kindly allow me, I will that in line with the GFF will come after Mati. Thank you. Mati, over to you.
Good afternoon, good morning, bonjour à tous.
I would like to talk in English, so I give you time to switch to the English booth. So it's a pleasure to be here today in order to share some updates from the GFF following Stephanie's presentation. So I'm in charge of the civil society partnership for the Secretariat. And I will give you in a few minutes some points from the GFF Secretariat. The first element or announcement to make, sorry, I have an issue with my device. Can you hear me? So I was saying that I would like to share with you the launching of the annual report of GFF. Some of you might have seen it on social networks. It was published yesterday. So we are going to disseminate it to the group and to other communication channel. And we commend your support, as my colleague said, and she has the link to share Otherwise, you will receive it in few minutes through your email addresses with key messages in French and English. And there's also a press release that was issued to go along with the report. So this is the first news. We are also going to share with you press news articles that were disseminated, that will be disseminated during the International Women's Rights Day on March 8th. And it talks about the theme of this year, which is to invest in for women and to accelerate progress. And I would like to say that this theme is in charge of our Deliver the Future campaign. So it's a campaign you have heard a lot about and you took part in it. And I would like to thank you for your efforts, for your message, and for all the events you held in your countries, on the field and also in the donor countries. And I want to thank you for this collaboration, and we hope that it will continue. The campaign is not yet over. It continues till the spring meeting of GFF and the World Bank. The date will be communicated shortly, and the campaign will be closed during that way. So the idea really is to keep on echoing the message that we have. And I know many of you, thank you, Vincent. Many of you are having either events around the CSW, the Commission on Women's Status in New York, but also in countries. There are a lot of events which are being held. So if you can echo and amplify the message on the theme of pushing donors to invest in sexual health, that would be good. As you know, in our countries, fundings are decreasing, but the theme is not pushed forward as it should be. So we keep on pushing forward on all sides, and we thank you for your support as far as resource mobilization is concerned beyond the campaign. I believe this battle, we all agree on its necessity, and it cannot continue with our stretched hands. So shortly we are going to give the information about the date of the event. For now, we don't yet have dates. Furthermore, I also would like to highlight that GFF will be part of a meeting starting today with other partners in Colombia on the theme of cervical cancer. So this discussion is held between the global partners at the World Health Organization with the support of GFF and Gavi. These themes, if you're working on them and you're able to amplify this message at the level of your social networks, it will be welcome. And I believe in the next week, we are going to talk a lot about the theme and questions that are coming usually, which are what can be done for immunization and how to integrate it in order to make countries work and prevent diseases. We're also going to talk about immunization and sensitization or prevention of cancer instead of sexual related messages. And it should be noted that it has been an hindrance to this prevention. I would like to land with an element, and it was the funding of the civil society engagement framework. And I would like to say that as a reply to Christina's presentation, this topic is of prime importance to the Secretariat, and it's of prime importance to our team. We're currently working on it, and we look forward to funding the next phase. Comments we heard not only in Nairobi, but it was highlighted again by Christina. These comments, we are aware of them and of the importance of increasing that funding to increase also not only the subvention, the subgrants, sorry, but also its length. This topic is clear. We are aware that it helps us to have a better impact on the field. So we are determined on working on it. So we are working on the next phase, and we try to draw lessons from the last phase. We draw lessons from the projects per se, but also what came out from the discussions we had in Nairobi last year. So what were your priorities and priorities on which you would like to focus on? Some came back on the presentation of a panelist before me. So this phase will be based on the project which we end in few months, and we are also going to see how we will improve it till now. So I will end here. I am not available. I am available for questions if you have them, and thank you for giving me the floor. Jackie, over to you.
Thank you so much, Marty, for the great insights and updates. Hopefully we're able to translate all of us, but we have a great opportunity where we'll have our IG reps, OAME and Maziko as discussants for this session, and then they will be able to again hand over to Stephanie and Marty in case of any questions. I already see one question in the chat from Michael. Michael, your question will be handled by Maziko and Oyemi. Over to Oyemi and then Maziko, and then you should invite Stefan and Marty to answer the questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Jackie. Thank you, Marty, for the updates that you've given. And we must say a very big thank you to GFF for all the initiatives they've actually put out to support civil society organizations in doing what we know how to do best in terms of accountability and pushing, advocating for the health and well-being of women, children, and adolescents. I want to say a big thank you because, of course, part of the initiative beyond the grants, civil society grants that was pushed out, is also the joint learning agenda that was also, in collaboration with other global health initiatives, as well as I know that there are GFF country leadership training, where there was mentorship and coaching for leadership program that was organized in some countries. So those are part of the initiatives of the Global Financing Facility. So this, I thought that we should also highlight a big thank you. We know that there are items that we've highlighted here and there that we know that still need strengthening. Of course, we know that the multi-stakeholder platform in different countries, the functionality and then the strength varies from country to country. And we've sent out recommendations how we feel that GFF can actually strengthen the process. Without taking so much of our time, I'll just go through some of the questions I've seen on the chat. I can see that Michael says, mesmerized by how the GFF focus has expanded over time. It's indeed important to have the nexus of climate and SRHR in the GFF strategy. Whilst have the countries been oriented on how they will integrate this in their GFF work, and how will this fit into the Ranker plus N investment cases of the countries? And the KPIs in the RBF mechanism. So do you want to take it one after the other, or I read all the questions? Marty? Marty, are you there?
Yes, Yemi, I'm here. I'm trying to read the question while trying to respond here.
Okay. So should I take it again? That was Michael. Or have you seen it?
Maybe it's I'll take notes. If others have questions in the meantime, they can, so I can read the. I don't want to waste time. I can read the question.
Awesome. Okay. Okay. The next one is French. Okay, so I'm just going to highlight it. I'm just typing it so you can see it again. So that's the next question. I just dropped it again on the chat, if you can see it. It's in French. Okay.
Oui, alors je vais commencer par la réponse par la question en français. Le rapport annuel en français, il est sur le site. Je vous le partagerai par un lien. Et sur le site, vous avez également des... je vous ai envoyé un lien juste avant. Et sur ce lien-là, vous avez accès à des cartes, à des messages que vous pouvez vous-même adapter et partager. Donc, ce sont des cartes qui sont disponibles sur le Google Drive. Ensuite, concernant la question sur est-ce que les pays ont été orientés. Donc, juste comme le disait Myriam tout à l'heure, la stratégie sur comment le GFF va intégrer le climat et la santé est en cours. Donc, on n'a pas une stratégie qui est finie. Et on travaille également avec les collègues de la Banque mondiale qui sont un peu plus avancés que nous là-dessus pour avoir un peu plus de clarté sur le comment on va travailler. Donc, une fois que cette stratégie elle est définie, et les membres de la circonscription du groupe Yemi, Jackie et les autres collègues qui sont dans le groupe des investisseurs peuvent également participer à contribuer à cette stratégie-là. Donc, une fois que la stratégie elle est un peu plus claire sur comment le GFF veut travailler sur l'intégration santé-climat, ensuite, ce sera un peu plus partagé avec les pays. Ça fera bien entendu partie intégrante du travail qu'on fait dans les pays, des dossiers d'investissement. Et en termes d'indicateurs de performance dans le financement basé sur la performance, je pense que vous êtes un peu plus en avance que nous là-dessus parce qu'on n'a pas encore de stratégie pour pouvoir aller de l'avant et répondre à ces questions actuellement. Et j'invite aussi ma collègue Stéphanie à compléter s'il y a des questions qui n'ont pas été très claires et pour compléter.
Are we still on?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Thank you so much, Oyemi and Mati. Maziko, did you have any question that you took note of? Any points to add?
Mine is not a question. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, colleagues. Thank you so much, Mati and Oyemi, but also my colleagues, Jackie, Stephanie, Maria, who have spoken before me. I'm so happy that I just want to expand on what has already been said. But what's most important is what Mati has mentioned. It's just to do with the GFF Annual Report, which was released yesterday. It's a very important report, very detailed. It explains on how the GFF strategy has been implemented by countries, including the civil society. So let's take a look at that annual report. And I want to congratulate the Secretariat through Marty and Stephanie for coming up with a comprehensive annual report, which is giving us a true picture on how country are fared in terms of the areas, the focal areas which GFF it's about, it's implementing at the moment. We're looking at issues to do with engagement, issues to do with financing, issues to do with alignment, and all those issues, and that report. So I would want to urge you, colleagues, to read that report because it also gives a picture on how your country is faring. Because here, civil society, we are watchdogs. We are supposed to make sure that what GFF and our countries have agreed is implemented as have been agreed. So it's very important that we read the report and look at our countries, how we are fared in terms of different areas. For example, issues of to do with investment case. How is Nigeria faring? How is Malawi faring? How's Uganda? How is Tanzania faring on that? So the report is giving us a picture, even we civil society, how have we fared to influence change in our countries, in the engagement processes and all those. So it will be very important to have an interest to look at the report. It will give you a picture. It rounds up whatever we have done last year, also giving the hope on what is going ahead of us. Currently, as my colleagues has mentioned, GFF is going through the development of the new strategy, which at the moment would rely on what has already been done in the previous strategy, which we're implementing at the moment. So it'd also be important to take a look and be able to hear what he's talking about. But another issue, which is also very important in civil society, as Marty has been championing and Stephanie through us at the GFF Secretariat, is issues to do with the resource mobilization of the GFF. We failed to meet the target. And we civil society were got a role to play in making sure that we mobilize resources in different ways. One, committing to the GFF. Two, make sure that the developed countries are investing in the GFF to the areas which GFF is trying to do, but also to make sure that issues of IDA, International Development Assistance, the resources which go to our countries, how much is going towards health. So as civil society, we've got a role to play in influencing changes in our countries. Some countries are receiving these IDA grants. You should make sure that as a civil society, we need also to support the initiative of the GFF to make sure that resources are available and also available for the CSOs. Lastly, in the IG meeting, we read out a statement, which I think Christina has ably summarized in her presentation. One of the things we did was the material grants to the civil society. And I'm happy that Marty, Stephanie, but also the whole GFF family were in agreement to what we proposed to the GFF. We are hoping in the next few months, once the negotiations have completed, maybe we might see maybe a material grant coming on our way, because I think as Matt has mentioned, they have been also playing behind the scene. But what is most important is to have more resources for the GFF. So thank you, Jackie. This is what I could summarize, and also just to hint on other areas which my colleagues has mentioned, just to expand. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mati Maziko Oyemi. We have 15 minutes that we are going to share between the general discussion and the closing remarks. So for those who had questions related to GFF, and maybe we did not capture them the way you wanted, we still have Mati and Stephanie online until they say they are off. I'm sure there are letters on the chat. You can still use this general discussion. But meanwhile, we have this discussion focusing on the CSG 2024 action agenda, but also the IG report, including those the statement that we mentioned. So we are opening up this discussion. We are going to use a maximum of 10 minutes and save 5 minutes for closing this meeting. Over to you, Tim. My colleagues are all available online, just in case something is typed and I don't see it, but we'll start with those whose hands are raised, and I will invite Mati for in additions, then Brady, and then more hands and more questions. This is your time. Thank you. Over to you, Mati.
Thank you, Jackie. There's an important element that I would like to highlight. There are joint learning agenda members who are going to gather in Nairobi before the end of March, before the last week of March. And some of you in this webinar will be part of that workshop. And its objective is to gather all partners who took part in this 2-year program in order to learn from the past experiences, and also to look forward to collaboration opportunities with all platforms working on health funding. So the idea is to leave that workshop with a better idea of the roadmap and of the next plan of joint learning agenda phase. So this was an important element of the civil society this last year. I forgot to announce it. It is an important event that will be held in Nairobi. Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you so much. Vincent, can I request that you summarize in case people didn't succeed with a Zoom, this comment from Mati, with a Zoom translation, kindly.
Yes, absolutely. Jackie, thank you very much. So the comment to Mati just reiterated the importance that the GLA, the Joint Learning Agenda, is having an important meeting coming up at the end of the month, March, in Nairobi, to follow up on their great advances regarding the specific program that is specifically on health financing, inclusive of the whole RAMNAC and nutrition spectrum. So I think there have been great outcomes from the GLA, and it's I guess the regrouping also to learn the best experience and to learn the latest impact, as it's a longer time investment from the GFF there. I hope that was useful, Jackie. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vincent. That's very helpful. This is an additional one for Mati and Stephanie before maybe you get off. This is from Howard Hennet Kenya. He says Kenya has been approved an additional fund called the Challenge Fund. Do we have any information on this? Over to you, then we can go to Brady, whose hand has been up for a while. Then more questions. Over to you, Mati and Stephanie.
Thank you for the question. Unfortunately, I don't have any clarification on that. Maybe I'll invite Stephanie in case she has any information. I know that this is there. I know about the fund, but I cannot speak to it. And I would invite him to reach out to the liaison officer, Esther, I believe her name is. So she might be able to provide more info. Stephanie, maybe you can come in.
Yeah, no, agreed, Mati. I think it's best to reach out to the liaison officer, and also we're happy to make that connection with the focal point as well in Kenya if that helps.
Good morning, everyone. I am Brady. So I would like to ask my question in French. So I have a question and a recommendation. Let me start with a recommendation first, which is to ask the GFF Secretariat to review as far as possible and put to our disposal in GRC the annual report, and this will help us to share it with the different stakeholders who are working on SHR in with a good focus, because as we know it, and as I said it, and I keep on saying it, this year DRC is among the priority countries of OECD, and the GFF at the level of our country, there is still some concern or problem and we are going to hold a meeting on how to revamp GFF at the country level, because we have many working consortium, but the GFF at the level of my country is facing problems. So if we can see how to revamp it, it would be good, because as I am talking, I took part in a meeting with the CPND, which is a national framework and which works at the country level. I tried to talk to them about GFF, but they asked me if the GFF is still operational, because most of the donors, among the donors, few are taking part in GFF countries. So I would like to know if we can have a letter from the GFF Secretariat in order to revamp the GFF and to make it efficient in GRC. So this was the recommendation I had. And my question is, how can we revamp the GFF at the country level? When you shared the representation opportunities, I noticed an opportunity for the youth to have a seat .
Thank you so much. Michael, if you're still online, I want to check if your question was answered. We have 1 or 2 minutes so that we can get Marty and Stephanie and the rest respond to. I don't see more hands. I assume that we don't have more comments, but in case you still have one, we can add 1 more minute as Marty responds to Brady. But also, Michael, if your question was answered on key population, kindly let us know. Because
Not
it's also GFF. Okay, can you rephrase it very fast? We are running out of time.
Yeah, in the Amelia's presentation, she shows that in the GFF strategy they are factoring in climate focus, that is climate and SRHR. And so for me, that is really an important aspect, given the years GFF has been there since 2016. And it got me thinking that if we have this GFF strategy, then how are the countries going to integrate it, the climate focus, into the RMNCH investment cases, but also on the KPIs, key performance indicators we have in the RBF mechanism. So have we thought about that, or have countries been oriented on that when we are going to have also with time a climate focus and SRHR within the GFF strategy? So for me, that was one of the concerns I had about the whole thing.
Okay, thank you, Michael. We have a few minutes. Liz, is the question for GFF so that you read it out and then proceed?
Yeah. Yes, and good afternoon. My question is more information on the program in Kenya upcoming. We are in Africa, and if it's possible, we can attend.
Okay. Thank you so much. Vincent has just given clarification on the challenge fund. Check the chat. Over to you, Marty. Then we will now proceed to the closing. Any other questions, comments, kindly post them. We'll find a way of responding to all of them as we share the recordings and the report or read out from this meeting. Over to you, Marty and Stephanie. Then we go to the closing remarks.
Many thanks, Jackie, and for the questions. First, for Lizzie, the workshop is actually being organized and led by Waki Health, our partner in Nairobi, and the concept note is being finalized and should be shared hopefully this week. Just so you know, the workshop is going to be attended by trainers who, as you know, 20 trainers were trained through this workshop across several African countries. So the ones who participated in the TOT, in the training of trainers program during the JLA initial phase, are the ones who are going to attend. However, the goal is to have this workshop in a hybrid format so that those who were not directly invested in the initial phase can still take part, because as we understand, many partners have been trained by these trainers. Maybe your organization was one of them. So the CSO organizations that have participated in this program will also be invited to join. So we will share, Waki Health and the partners will share to this group very, very shortly in the next few days information about this training, so that all of you can participate in the workshop. The date of the workshop is the 26th and 27th of March, so you already can note those dates, and the information will come to you very, very soon. The next question about DRC, I'll just quickly, I guess, for ease, do it in English, so it's easy for the translators. For DRC, the question is also the same as I think the question that Michael was asking. We need, please, I would suggest you go to the liaison officer who is responsible for coordinating.
Michael, kindly mute. Yeah, sorry.
Yes, so the liaison officer in the country, in DRC, will be really the best person in country to provide you with information about the GFF, communicating the GFF. There's also a civil society representative in DRC that can help facilitate this connection. So please reach out to PAI colleagues or to us at the Secretariat, so we can provide some of this information either from the CSO side or from the GFF side. I'm happy to provide this information, but please reach out to the liaison officer, which is your best bet, at least in country, to know about what the GFF is doing. And again, this is not, the GFF doesn't have a team in country. The liaison officer is there. All of the discussions around this is happening and led by the government focal point. So it's not up to the GFF to decide about the decisions, about the meetings. It's really up to the government focal point that leads on this, along with other partners within the national country platform. Over to you, Jackie. I hope I responded to.
Thank you so much. All the other questions, someone who has challenges in Sierra Leone, I can see Christina has taken note. Christina, we have CSO reps in different countries. We have platforms, coalitions that actually have the most information, some of the information at country level. And when you reach out to, if you don't have a CSO rep or a platform, you reach out to PI, the hub, they will give the right guidance and give you the contact. We are requesting for only 5 minutes to close this meeting, and I hand over to you, Amy and Andrew. And thank you everyone for being with us. And up to the end, I can still have 58, but that's still a good number up to the end of the meeting. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you everyone for joining. A big thank you to the GFF Secretariat for being part of our meeting. Thank you for the PAI, the NGO host, for making sure everything goes well. Thank you, colleagues, the IG reps, for sharing your thoughts on the IG17 meeting. Thank you all for your insightful contributions. We are so grateful, and we know that we'll continue to push for accountability, transparency that is responsive to the needs of the communities we serve. Thank you, thank you, thank you, as we continue to engage. Over to you, Andrew.
Thank you. If we can go to the slide for how to get involved. Excellent. So we invite anyone listening who's not yet a member, and for current members to become more involved. If you want to join, you can either use this QR code here or go to the CSOGFFhub.org latest news. These are great ways to get involved with the CSCG, where we have upcoming civil society and youth IG rep elections. This will be March 7th is the last day to send in your expression of interest. We also invite people to share impact stories from their work, and we have the CSCG working groups, which cover accountability, health financing, capacity building, country engagement, and the Global Youth Platform. They're currently developing the 2024 action plans for the CSCG. And if you can click the next one. So we invite you to go to CSOGFFhub.org. This is where you can find a wide variety of resources, news updates, and information on grant opportunities. You can also sign up for our quarterly newsletter. You can also follow CSCG for GFF on Twitter, also known as X, and YouTube to be part of the, you get regular updates and be part of the global movement for SRMN, CAHN, equity and accountability. And if you have any questions about how you can join any of these working groups or sharing your impact, you can contact us at ngohost@pai.org. Hit the next slide. And finally, both for those who want to join the CSCG and for current members, we invite you to join the CSCG working groups. These lead on the thematic work of the CSCG, and we'll have elections coming up in the spring and summer. And so it's a great time to join. Each group has been tasked with advancing one of the 2024 action items. So again, if you want to join, you can email ngohost@pai.org to learn more about the working groups and how to join. It's a great time to join, great time to get involved.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. We've come to the end of our meeting. If there's no any other word from the Secretariat, once again, thank you and thank you. We'll meet again for a pre-IG when the date is communicated for the next IG, as Marty and Stephanie said. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.